Hi all, I'm Hemanth. I'm a senior staff engineering manager at PayPal. Happy to see you all on a Friday evening. Thank you for making it here. I'm also a Google developer expert in web and payments domain and a TC39 delegate. TC39 is a committee which kind of designs and decides the standards. The standard is ECMAScript, which apparently JavaScript implements. So we kind of decide on some of the features, vote for it, and have consensus as a committee. And today I'm here to talk about free and open source software, what and why and how one could contribute to it. So let me start by sharing my screen. All right. I hope you're able to see the screen. Yeah, I see a thumbs up. Thank you. So we are starting with a true story. The year is 1981. And there is a printer issue. The issue with the printer is if there are multiple people requesting for a print, the printer kind of used to get jammed. If few people hit print at the same time, the printer used to jam, and sometimes it used to mess up and mix up different print jobs. So it was one of these machines. It was the P10 and P2K. Those were the most common machines that were used at that point of time, and the printer looks so small there. And this was in the computer science and artificial intelligence lab at a place. Any guesses from the audience? Which place is this?
MIT.
Oh yeah, bang on. Yes, it's MIT. So it was all happening here, and the printer was from Xerox. And there happened to be a gentleman at MIT who had previously seen a similar issue with another set of printers, where he was able to pull in the driver for it and look into the issue and provide a queuing mechanism so the printer jobs doesn't collide and everything was smooth. So he found out that this belongs to Xerox. So he reached out to Xerox and asked, hey, could you give me the source, because I know how to solve this. And Xerox said, no, we can't give you the source. It's closed, it's proprietary, and it belongs to us, and we can't give it to you. And it was 1983 by then. This gentleman decided to start GNU, and then GCC, the GNU C compiler, and then ECMA, Emacs, the editor, and also started Free Software Foundation. Any guess who this person is? He also started this thing called as copyleft, which is more like the anti of copyright. So he called it copyleft to be more punny in nature and funny in nature. So you could copyleft things. Copying is allowed, should be allowed, and it's an art, share it, copy it kind of a thing with copyleft for all rules and laws. He also started the GNU General Public License. He authored it and said what the license should be and how does it look and all of it, and how we could apply it in different softwares. And then we have lunch together. Trust me, I'm the same person without the beard. This was a picture from my college days, and the gentleman is on the right. Any guess who he is? That's RMS in short. That's Richard Matthew Stallman. He's the father of free and open source software. Luckily, I happened to maintain his servers for a few years. There have been few controversies with him too. I'm not really dealing with that from his personality perspective, but I'm more in terms of his philosophy and free software in general. So what does free software, what does the word free mean in free software? I would like to have it more of a conversational nature. So if anybody wants to pitch in for what does free stands for, in free software, it would be nice. And Sham, how good are we on time? What are we targeting here?
I guess it's kind of up to you. Like it's pretty flexible.
Okay,
Usually maybe like if you can wrap by around 7:30ish,
sure,
but should
sure.
be fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So what does free and free software mean? Does it mean that it is priced at $0?
Oh, I'm not sure like what it stands for, if it does stand for something, but I think I read online previously that like they thought of it more as like Libre, like freedoms, like you can do whatever you want with the code.
Yes, absolutely, right. So it's not free as in free beer or free meal or free lunch, but it's free as in freedom, right? That's exactly what it stands as in. I didn't mean to say it was an acronym or anything, but what it weighs in that sentence. So free as in freedom in free speech and Libra, like, and things like that, right? And not really free meal or free beer. So freedom as free as in freedom. So I always take this example of bisi bele baat. I being a native Bangalorean, and this is a pretty common meal in south of India and Karnataka, where this is called as bisi bele baat. It's an Indian rice lentil dish. So I kind of take this example when I try to explain free and open source software. So let's look into what bisi bele baat is. It's basically a dish made up of rice and some lentils, and you can add some veggies to it, and there's some masala that goes into it. But we really don't know who made this dish first, and it's not patented. There is no copyright here, and it's kind of a dish that is more of a tradition, and it kept evolving from one person to another, and each family might have a different variant. Some of them might probably add yogurt to it, somebody might make it a bit more sweeter or a bit more spicy. So there are different variations of the same dish. And I think of software to be bisi bele baat, or basically a food dish, right? So if I were to have a recipe for bisi bele baat, and I share it with my friend or family, and they take my recipe and they modify it and they make a better version of bisi bele baat, so be it, right? Similarly with software, we should be in a state where we should be free and open to share our code with general public, and they should be able to modify it, and also probably, like, based on the license, credit me and saying that, hey, this is the bisi bele baat recipe that Hemanth had, and Sham took that recipe and made it better, and that's Sham's recipe, but there's still a small credit saying that this was from Hemanth. So that's kind of a crux of it, right? Like, when you have a recipe, I think it's always good to share it with your family and friends, and that's how software should be too. So being more precise, there are 4 freedoms of free software. The freedom 0, interestingly, the counting starts with 0. The freedom 0 is the freedom to run the program as you wish for any purpose, right? It should not put a constraint saying that, hey, it should run only on a particular OS, on a particular version, if you're a paid user and things like that. So it should give you that freedom to pick up the source and compile it and run it wherever you wish, may it be on a Raspberry Pi or on Mac OS or GNU Linux, wherever you want, right? And then freedom 1 is the freedom to study how the program works and change it so it does like what you wish to do. Like, you should be able to view the source basically and understand what's happening. It should not be like encrypted and obfuscated, but it should be readable, and it should be available for modification, like read and change it. And freedom 2 is the freedom to redistribute copies so you can help your neighbor. So you after you modify, you should be able to redistribute it, right? After you kind of study or change it, you should be able to redistribute it. And freedom 3 is the freedom to distribute copies of your modification. So basically, whatever changes you made, and that should also be like free and open. Like, you should have the freedom to distribute it. So it should not say that, hey, you can take my source, you can modify, you can read, but you're not supposed to distribute it. That can't really happen, right? If you look into most of the corporate world today, we consume a lot of free and open source software, and the tools that we again write out of those softwares is proprietary again. So it does not stop folks from writing proprietary tools using free and open source software. So that's the whole motto here of having these 4 freedoms for the software, to kind of label it as free and open source. So RMS also had started this other project called Herd, which he thought was, hey, let me go ahead and replace Unix because that had a lot of proprietary stuff in it. So let me start this project called as Herd, where a group of people could contribute and emulate everything that Unix did at that point of time. Meanwhile, there was a mail that was passed in the similar group saying that, hey, everybody, they're using the mix. That's like the thing in terms of OS. This gentleman, the TLDR of this mail is, this gentleman says that, hey, I'm trying to do a hobby. It's not as big as GNU, but a small, tiny project where I'm trying to build an OS, and I'm currently have been able to port like Bash, and I'm using GCC, the GNU C compiler, to compile my binaries to form the OS. And yes, it's free and the code is open, it's multi-threaded, so things like that, right? And he was not able to crack one of the things which he is describing in the mail. Any guess who this person is?
Is it Linux?
Yes, it's Linus Torvalds. So Linus wrote this mail saying that he is using GCC to compile his kernel, and he has made some progress, and it's just a hobby. And we all know where that hobby went and how big Linux grew to be. But if you notice in the mail, and although the effort, without GNU starting or without GCC happening, there is very a sleek chance of Linux to be where it is today. So all the proponents of free and open source software kind of suggest you call it as GNU Linux rather than just Linux, because without GNU, Linux would have not happened, right? So we tend to call it as GNU Linux instead of GNU. So GNU is a recursive acronym for GNU is not Unix. So, right, so GNU is a recursive acronym which says GNU is not Unix, and that's why we call it GNU Linux and rather than just Linux. Hold on, I think I missed one slide there. Yeah. So folks say open source, but say free software. That says more about freedom, right? And let's kind of see an example, right? Open source and free software, are they same, or do we have a difference? VS Code, we were just speaking about that. Is it a free software or is it an open source software? Any guess?
It's a free software.
Let's see. So if you look into the license, the scope of the license, it says, it reads few many things, but it says you may not reverse engineer the whole thing, decompile or remove minimize blocks, or use the software in any way that is against the law, share, publish, rent, lease software, or provide the software as a standalone offering for others to use. So is it a free software or an open source software? It is not a free software, right?
Open source.
Yeah. So the line is thin, but it's pretty evident when you read the licenses of the softwares that we use, which we think is free, but it is open source in nature. But some of the softwares are like together, if it's free and open, we call it like free and open source software. So to kind of, it might contradict sometimes that, hey, this is open source, and if it's not free, then how can we call it free and open source, right? So it is just for general awareness, so people can connect when they say open source and not confuse when we just say free software. If you just say free software, most of them would think it's free of cost. And that's not what we are referring to here. We're talking about freedom. This is Eric S. Raymond, and he wrote a wonderful article called the Cathedral and the Bazaar. Have you heard of this? So he talks about how software development happens in like two different formats. And the cathedral, he says, it's more hierarchical in nature, that there's a root person who decides that this is how we design and develop, and everybody else follows blindly, and that kind of becomes a hierarchy, and there's a structure to it. But the other side is the free and open source software, which is more like a bazaar where there is a lot of madness, but there's a pattern to the madness. If you go to a bazaar, there are folks selling fruits, there are folks selling meat, and there are some folks who are selling drinks, and there are like random stores selling random stuff, right? So, but as a consumer, you go and pick and choose different things that you want and build your own thing. So free software, free and open source software is more like a bazaar in nature, whereas proprietary is more like cathedral. So it's a very good article to read on the cathedral and the bazaar from Eric S. Raymond. And it's worth reading. So that's a good analogy on how proprietary softwares are and free and open source software is. So if you want to have freedom, the only way of having it while using computers is by rejecting proprietary software, and that's the aim of free software movement. So that's the whole motto, right? But not everybody can be Stallman. There are a few examples where Stallman refused to get an MRI or get a scan because the machine had proprietary software in it, or it was connected to a Windows machine and things like that. So, and he doesn't use any mobile devices and have aluminum foil. So that's a good motto in which it started, and it gives immense freedom when applied, and sometimes it gets harder and tricky in pure philosophy perspective. But why are we talking all this, right? Like, why are we talking a lot about philosophy? And there should be a lot of philosophers playing here, maybe the GIF, yeah. So let me ask you this question, right? Use a lot of software, maybe some of it is licensed by your college, and some of it you buy, and some of it you download, out of which there might be multiple free and open source software, right? Have you ever made a list of those softwares and said, hey, I use around 50 of them, out of which maybe 15 or 20 is free and open source? And out of those many, how many are you contributing back? Like, for example, VS Code again, because we were discussing about it. Have you ever thought of going and reading the source of VS Code? Have you created issues or pull requests or try to contribute to VS Code? If you have, that's great. If not, it's time to pause and think like, hey, I'm consuming so many free and open source software, and have been contributing back. That's a good question to ask. Where I went on creating commits every day and working on multiple projects for 365 days is the goal that I had, but it reached till say 500 plus, and was able to contribute and commit to many projects, and also started few repos on GitHub, like the function programming jargon, which was just a README that I started with few headings that I thought was complex in functional programming, like functor, monoid, monads, and just started adding definitions to it. But like people started liking it. Like there were 800 forks and 13K stars. And I also did a similar exercise on giving Git tips that also like got few many stars and forks, and a lot of people started translating it in multiple languages, and things like that happen. So why am I saying this is, if I am able to do something like this, anybody can, right? Here's another example of the number of downloads per day that my node modules used to get, still do get. And so it is possible. If we just even start small, we can create a great impact in the free and open source world, right? So how do we break this all? You can think of it in terms of working in different sectors maybe in terms of functionality, or you want to improve the robustness or the safety, or you want to look into the benchmark or documentation, make things simpler and modular. There are multiple ways to do it. So before that, you need to understand that there are various flavors of users of the software, right? At the very top, we have the user, the end user, who doesn't have like any knowledge of working of the software, but are happy to use, but still can provide meaningful feedback on how they feel about the software. Then we have contributors who are basically reading the code, understanding, trying to improve it. And then we have maintainers. Maintainers are the ones who were there from the very initial start, or even got into in between and then got complete hold of the repo and understands how the software works from ins and outs, and are able to decide whether the contribution is meaningful or not, and support the contributors and things like that, right? So those are the maintainers. It's important to realize that there are these three different set of audiences for a software. So let's get started. What are the different ways that you can contribute, right? Either you can create your new project, or you can create an alternative to an existing project, or you can join an existing project. This can be the main three ways on how you can contribute to free and open source projects. Seems to be a bit of a latency. Yeah. Hold on. Maybe my system is heating a bit. Step one is selecting, right? Like, how do you choose? There are like millions of free and open source project, and we have GitHub today, which kind of gives access to that. We have GitLabs and a few other platforms where you could choose. Like, how do you select? One of the easiest ways to probably go into the trending tab in GitHub and select the language of your choice. In this case, JavaScript is what we see on the screenshot. We have Next.js, which is Vercel today. We have decentralized video chat and things, JavaScript algorithms and things like that, which are trending at that point of time when I took the screenshot. So you could pick up any project of your choice, which is trending, and try and study it. How do you study it? You start by README. Any good free and open source project would have a detailed README, which talks about probably what the project is, what are the different challenges it is trying to solve, what has it previously solved, how do you like build this, how do you, if it needs a compilation step, how do you compile it, and what are the dependencies, and what are the different tooling you need, and all of it is described in the README. So you would go ahead and read and analyze that. Lag. Okay. Here's an example of Hemanth, which is a free and open source software, which is part of Google, where I was part of Hemanth as a core team, and we had this as a README. One of the designers helped us to create all of those designs, which is also a contribution. And we created a README where we said, hey, this is how it looks, and what is Hemanth, and all of the details, right? And finally, of course, like, read the source. Want to know more? Use the source look. So go ahead, read the source and understand, and ask for help. There are a lot of people who have been working on the code base for years if it's an old project, and there are maintainers who can help when you are not able to understand a particular piece in the code. It's also good to start from test and then go into bits of the code, like you run the unit test and try to understand what's happening. There are different ways in you can like try and analyze and read the code. Sometimes you hit a bug and it throws an error, and you know, okay, it's error at line number 34 on such and such a file. So you can go there and study and try to understand why that error is happening and next, right? And then you clone the repo basically to your local, and then you can pick an issue. You could go through the GitHub repo, and it will normally have a lot of issues that the users have listed, or there might be some feature request, there might be bugs, there might be missing documentation, missing tests and likes. So you can pick an issue of your choice. Some of the good repos would have this in their label. which is called as good first issue. So good first issues are issues that are good for someone who is new to contribution, and you can filter with good first issue and pick up and fork the repo, clone it, and contribute back, which would be pretty simple, and that would be an easy start. So if you look for topics and go for good first issue, you find more than 90 public repositories matching this topic. Then you can dive inside and pick up all of those good first issues based on your language of choice and likes, right? And step 5 is to fix it. Figure it out. Well, if you're not alone, and as I mentioned, you could just ask, or you could just try something and say, hey, this is what I tried, and it's not working. What am I missing? And I would like to improve this particular piece. Can you suggest? And definitely, there are a lot of people out there to help. So you can also find alternative paths if you're not a person who always wants to fork a repo or read through the code and go ahead and fix the bug. There are different paths in which you can contribute. Start your own project, right? If you're that kind of a person who experiments a lot, you can start your own project, and no project is silly. Putting it out in the public, try to build in public, make mistakes in public is a very good way to learn and quickly learn and progress and learn from other people's mistake, and not just making the mistake and learning. So it's a very good space to start something of your own. Are we missing something here? And Hassan happens to be from your university, right? I think he is an UC Davis alumni. Do you like planning events? Like this, for example, is also an event. So do you like planning events? If so, yes, you can contribute to free and open source software by creating events and avenues. You can invite free and open source contributors, ask them to speak about it, or you can invite a particular author of a particular technology. You could invite them to speak about it, or if you're facing an issue that in a free and open source repo and you're not able to fix, you can invite for more like an lunch and learn or an hackathon. So there are multiple ways in which you can create events and spread awareness as well as improve the project, right? Do you like to design? Just there will be a lot of repos looking for designers, may it be creating icons or even designing the entire web application, or creating logos, or even like the mascots for projects and things like that. So if you like to design, go ahead and explore that. And if you like to write, of course, you could go and improve the README. You could go and start a few things which is more of documentation, or you could write things like I tried on writing about Git tips or blogging, or I don't know if blogging is still a thing with you folks, but it's still for me. Or you could also do podcasting and videos and likes, right? So start and it'll just grow as people support and you have the community and there's a great spirit for free and open source, right? And do you like organizing things? If so, yes, you could again go ahead, go through the repo and say, hey, this doesn't really look the way I think it should be, so here's my proposal. Or you could also go into reading specifications. You can read ECMAScript specification and like other language specification like Python, or if you're into Java still, you can read those specifications and kind of try to organize it or try to present it in a smarter fashion that anyone who is new to reading spec can understand, and make it simpler and organize things. So you could do that as well. If you like helping people, of course, there are like multiple ways to do that. You could go to different issues, read and try to understand, try to reproduce it, and comment back saying that, hey, I was able to reproduce it, and this is how it looks from my end. I was able to identify a particular issue and things like that, right? Or if there's a missing test, you could also go ahead and write that, and there are different forums for that as well. Or you can be the boss baby. And how do you do it? Stage 0 is to ideate. So because you are set of folks who are form this group, it's pretty easy for you all to sit regularly and ideate. So stage 0 is to ideate. So the ideation might be in all these factors, right? Would it be documentation? Would it be reading the code? Would it be writing the test? Would it be finding bugs? Would it be testing? Or would it be like end-to-end functionality and things like that, right? So you could create different buckets and start ideating, and for that you could pick eating on stage 0. And stage 1 is that groups, right? Now you have, so each group might be interested in different pieces of free and open source software. One of them might want to contribute to Git, another one wants to contribute to GNU Linux, another one wants to contribute to VS Code, someone wants to work on OpenAI and things like that, right? So you kind of create that smaller subsets from your group. And stage 2, you'd have a leader for each group. And the leader could rotate, right? It need not be the same person always. By leader, I mean to say their responsibilities would be more like kind of keeping a tab on where we are, what is our plan like, and kind of have a board on what needs to be done, where are we, and what's our plan for probably in the next 2 weeks and likes. And stage 3 is publishing that effort, right? You could also have a log where you're saying, hey, this week, this is what we did. And that could be on GitHub saying, hey, we as a group studied Git today, and this is what we understood. And then you could keep publishing that. And at some point, if you find a bug or if you find a fix to a bug that's already existing, that would be a great way to publish. Stage 4, there's no stage 4. Basically go to stage 0 and keep repeating this across various projects. You could also make it interesting because we thought that we could divide it into different groups. You could start creating like a blue and a red, for example, and start adding points like, hey, I create a PR, I get X points, I probably improve the documentation, I get Y points, and so on, and kind of gamify it. And I have seen this working in many universities, and it's been fun to do that. Yeah, that's me. You can find me on htman.com or tweet to me at Hemanth. And I'm happy to, I have many projects of mine which I'm seeking maintenance for. So I can happily hand over the entire project to you to improve it and make it better from there. So boiling all of this into a kind of a mind map, which I really like, mind maps. So Foss contribution can be like broadly classified into these 6 categories. It could be reporting bugs, that's finding bugs, reproducing and writing bug reports, or translating content, like choosing the language that you want, using the tools, following the standards, and making the translation happen. Or it could be like creating artwork, that is like designing logo, making icons, drawings, illustration, videos, and all of those. Or you could submit patches, like forking the repo, writing the code, making sure the tests are there in place, sending a PR, adhering to the contribution guidelines and likes. Or it could be writing documentation, reading, editing, adding and reviewing documentations, and of course, organizing events, planning, inviting speakers, promoting projects, hosting meetups. So I think in a crux, these are the different ways, and that would give you a lot of insights and learnings. Because I've walked this path where I started contributing to free and open source software in my college days. By the time I made it to the enterprise, I had an edge over others because I knew most parts of how an end-to-end project would work, because I was exposed to larger projects like Git or maybe some parts of Node.js and things like that. So that would give you a lot of confidence in navigating the code and understanding something which is very new, which is a very good skill to have. And I call it as a skill. By skill, you can definitely sharpen it learn it and keep improving on it. That's all I had as an introduction to free and open source software. I'm happy to answer any questions and discuss more on how we can contribute and make the world better with free and open source software. Thank you.